I worked late on my birthday. When I finally checked my phone, all I saw was, "We sold your car. Family comes first. Be grateful we let you keep your job." The screen glowed back at me, blinding in the darkness of my office. I blinked, reread the message, then just stared. There wasn't a happy birthday or even a question mark. Just that single emotionless sentence. My hands went still on the keyboard. For years I'd worked in silence through holidays. Illness, exhaustion. I'd stayed behind while others took vacations. Always the dutiful one, always the one who put family first. But tonight, they'd made a decision without me. One I could never unknow. The cake on my desk, half chocolate, half vanilla, was beginning to sag under its own frosting. The intern had brought it in with a cheerful happy birthday Rowena earlier in the afternoon. I hadn't touched it. I'd meant to take a photo, maybe pretend to celebrate when the email slowed down. But now looking at it, felt hollow. Ridiculous even. I grabbed my bag and keys, trying not to slam the door behind me. Outside, the night air wrapped around me like fog, cold, uninviting. I drove in silence, the hum of the tires on the empty highway, the only sound. My mind kept returning to the text. Sold. My car. Without asking. Without warning. When I pulled up to the family house in rural Virginia, the gravel crunched differently, sharper somehow. I knew why. My car's usual spot was empty. The driveway looked like a mouth with a missing tooth. The porch light was on, flickering. I didn't knock. I still had a key. Inside the house smelled of overcooked stew and lemon-scented floor cleaner. Familiar, but not comforting. My mother sat at the kitchen table, leafing through coupons with the TV humming in the background. She didn't look surprised. "You came all this way?" she said, flipping a page. "We figured you were working." I was, until I saw the message. She looked up then briefly. "You mean the car Ethan needed it more?" It was time. I took a step closer. "It was mine. Sweetheart, you barely used it. You're always holed up in that office. Ethan's starting his final semester. He's got so much on his plate." Before I could respond, my father walked in from the hallway. Robe, slippers, calm as ever. "You're making this into a bigger deal than it is," he said. "We're a family. We share. You make good money. It's not like you can't get another one." I stared at him. "You didn't even ask me. We didn't think we had to." He poured himself water like we were discussing the weather. "Family comes first. That's the way it's always been." I felt my nails dig into my palm. I bought that car myself. I maintained it. I paid it off. And now? Ethan needs it. You still have your job. Count your blessings. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. My body went still, like it didn't trust my mouth not to betray my emotions. From upstairs, Ethan's voice rang out casual and too loud. "Ro, don't be dramatic. You can Uber for now, right?" I stared at the fridge. On the top shelf sat a tray of half-eaten cake. I stepped closer and saw the blue-iced words, "Happy birthday, Ethan." The date was from 2 weeks ago. My mother opened the fridge, pulled it out with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's still good if you want a slice." I didn't answer. I barely breathed. Every second in that kitchen felt like a cruel performance, one I no longer wanted a part in. I turned toward the door. "Rowena," my father called after me. "Don't forget to Venmo your share of Ethan's tuition. It's due next week." I didn't cry in the car. I didn't scream. But I knew something had snapped, something that wouldn't be fixed. When your whole life is built on being the good daughter, there's no manual for what to do when you stop. I stood outside Lila's apartment with nothing but a duffel bag and a pit in my stomach. The hallway light flickered above me as I waited. I hadn't even texted her ahead of time. I just drove. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't want to go anywhere else. Lila opened the door in an oversized hoodie and socks with mismatched stripes. No questions, no judgment. Just a long look and a hug that lasted until my shoulders softened. Inside her apartment was warm and chaotic books stacked sideways, a candle flickering dangerously close to an old coffee mug, a knit blanket half folded over a floral couch that didn't match the rug beneath it. It was perfect, safe. She handed me a mug of mint tea and curled up on the opposite end of the couch. So she said softly, "You finally walked out." I didn't plan it. I whispered. It just happened. She nodded slowly. That's usually how it goes. We sat in silence, the kind that held space rather than demanded it. I stared at the steam rising from my cup. Lila didn't push. She never did. But after a few minutes, she asked, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. How long have you been funding them?" I blinked. The question hit harder than I expected. I hadn't used that word before. Funding. But that's what it was, wasn't it? "I don't know," I said. Then quietly, "Since I got my first internship." She gave a low whistle. "That's almost, 12 years?" I nodded. "Utilities mine, groceries, mostly mine. Ethan's tuition, all me." She raised an eyebrow. "And the house maintenance? The new water heater last year? Also me? And they sold your car?" "They didn't even ask." Lila leaned back, processing. "Damn." I sipped my tea, letting the warmth fight the chill that hadn't left my bones since last night. I thought about all the times I'd skipped vacations, turned down better apartments, worn the same coat for 3 winters, all in the name of being helpful, responsible, good. A memory flashed: family dinner 3 years ago. I'd just gotten a small promotion. Ethan wanted to celebrate by planning a weekend ski trip. Henry declared we'd all pitch in. I opened my mouth to say I had student loans to pay. My father cut in. "Rowena will cover for now. She's earning more anyway." Everyone nodded, including me. I didn't even realize I'd agreed until the bill hit my inbox. Another time, I co-signed a loan for Ethan's car. Yes, the same one they just transferred my name onto. When he missed a payment, I covered it, quietly, because I was the steady one. I stared down at my hands clenched white around the mug. Lila reached forward and gently placed hers over mine. "You're not crazy," she said. "They are." My phone buzzed. A voicemail. I didn't need to check who it was from. Henry's voice started with that familiar blend of faux warmth and disdain. "Rowena, we're not mad, but you walking away like that, it was selfish. I know you'll come to your senses. We can talk when you're calmer." I deleted it mid-sentence. Lila watched me. "You sure you want to stay quiet about all this?" "I've been quiet for too long," I said. Later that night, after she went to bed, I sat at her kitchen table with my laptop. The glow of the screen lit up the worn wooden surface. I opened my finance folder and started digging. Bank transfers, utility payments, tuition records, PayPal screenshots, Venmo receipts. They were all there month after month, year after year. My fingerprints on every bill, every wire, every last dollar that kept that household running. I'd even set up auto payments for the electric and water bills through apps I built for convenience. Funny, I thought I was being smart, efficient. I didn't realize I was also making it effortless for them to exploit me. I created a spreadsheet, labeled tabs, rent, tuition, medical loans, miscellaneous. I logged every transaction I could find. The total climbed fast. 5 digits, then 6. My hand shook, but I didn't stop. I stared at the screen. The numbers didn't lie. It had always been me. I didn't want revenge. Not yet, but I wanted clarity. I wanted the truth on paper in black and white. Because when the time came, I would need it. Lila wandered in, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She saw the screen and sat beside me without a word. After a long pause, she said quietly, "If they treated you like this with money, imagine what else they think they own." Her words landed heavy, heavier than I expected. And for the first time in years, I let the idea in. Maybe I didn't owe them anything at all. The things I built for them, accounts, logins, networks, weren't gifts. They were chains. I used to think of it as love. Every app I installed, every reminder I set for bill payments, every spreadsheet I maintained for Dad's insurance claims or Mom's grocery expenses. It was all part of being helpful, responsible, the good daughter again. But tonight, under the hum of Lila's spare desk lamp and the soft whir of her guest room fan, I saw it for what it really was, a map of my own captivity. The spreadsheet stared back at me, a ghost of every yes I'd never questioned. Cable bills under my name, the electricity account that still auto-paid from my checking, The shared Dropbox folder full of scanned tax returns I'd prepared for them while juggling my own deadlines. All of it quietly built over years. They hadn't asked, I hadn't objected. That was our arrangement. That was our rot. My cursor hovered over the admin panel for our shared digital household platform. I'd coded it myself 3 years ago, a way to simplify mom and dad's bills and Ethan's tuition payments. Now with a flick of a key, I revoked every single admin access but mine. 3 pings lit up the corner of my screen. The family group chat. Henry Carter. Why are the lights not working? Martha Carter, internet's down. Did the card expire? Ethan Carter. Did you change the Hulu password? I'm locked out. I didn't answer. I just watched the messages stack up, one after another, like bricks closing in on a crumbling house. Lila stood in the doorway, arms folded, saying nothing. She didn't have to. Her silence felt like shelter. They've never had to figure anything out, I said softly, not turning around. I know, she replied, but they will now. I logged into the utility dashboard and canceled the auto pay schedule. Then the insurance apps, the medical reminders, the Apple Family Share account, all gone. I moved with methodical coldness, fingers gliding across keys like I was playing a long-forgotten melody, one I composed for everyone but myself. And yet, I didn't feel rage. Not even bitterness. What I felt was something stranger. A low, steady pulse of reclaiming. Not triumph, just clarity. A new window opened. I began creating a digital folder. In case they come after me. Inside, I dropped screenshots of every transfer I'd made for them, every signed agreement, every email authorization they'd forwarded to me with the subject line. Can you handle this? I uploaded photos of the birthday card I'd received last year, unsigned, generic. I included the text Dad sent me last week when I asked about reimbursement. Don't nickel and dime your own family. The walls of Lila's guest room seemed to lean in, holding me steady. My breath slowed. One last step. I opened my encrypted email account, attached the folder, and sent it to myself. Then again to a cloud archive under an alias I hadn't used in years, a backup of a backup. A soft breeze pushed through the window. Somewhere, a dog barked. Life outside carried on. I clicked on the final folder. Selected rename. Typed the packet. My thumb hovered over the upload button, then pressed. The blue bar began to fill slow and sure. She renames the folder the packet and sets it to upload to the cloud. Control isn't loud. It's quiet, subtle, until you pull one wire and the whole house flickers. That morning, I watched the storm begin. Not outside, but inside the Carter household. From the guest room at Lila's, I sat with my laptop glowing against the dim light, sipping stale coffee. I didn't need cameras. The chaos unfolded in real time through texts, alerts, and missed calls. The first text was from Ethan. Hey, is the internet down? Then Martha chimed in. Lights just blinked. You call the electric company? And finally, Henry, why isn't the mortgage auto-paid? This is embarrassing. I could almost hear the rising pitch in his voice, the way his jaw would clench when things slipped beyond his grasp. For a man who prided himself on being a provider, few things threatened him more than losing control. But that's exactly what I'd taken back. Last night, I changed every administrative password. Every account I'd once set up, I had systematically locked. The power company re-authentication required. The bank auto drafts paused. The shared mobile plan rerouted to a backup card that didn't exist anymore. And that was just the surface. Don't you think they're starting to notice? Lila asked gently, stepping into the room with a bowl of cereal. They noticed, I said. They just haven't figured out why. She gave a low whistle. You're really doing this. I have to. For the first time in my life, I have to choose myself. It wasn't easy. My finger hovered more than once before disabling the utilities dashboard. There had been a time I was proud of how seamless it all ran, how I juggled their finances better than they ever could. But it came at the cost of becoming their machine, not a daughter, a system. Henry once called me his indispensable girl. I used to glow under that label. Now it felt like a noose. From the couch, I heard another ping. This one was from our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Callahan. Henry, what's going on with the street? My heater's out. You said Rowena could help. I stared at it stunned. Even the neighbors. He had extended my unpaid labor that far. Lila leaned in. How many people were you managing exactly? More than I ever consented to, I murmured. A call came through. Martha. I let it ring. Then Henry. Again declined. Then Ethan. I almost answered, but I didn't. They were unraveling one thread at a time. By noon, Henry lost his temper. According to the family group chat, he'd yelled at Ethan for sitting on his hands and depending on his sister like a parasite. I knew that tone. It sounded like control cracking. He had no idea how much depended on me until now. The tuition hadn't been paid. The house's smart thermostat had reset to factory mode. His calendar app didn't sync. Even his digital garage lock wouldn't open. I got a voicemail shortly after. You made your point, Henry snapped. But this stunt hurts everyone. You need to come home, fix it, and stop being ridiculous. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop again and added that voicemail to the voices folder. Every message like it entitled Blaming Desperate was cataloged. Not to retaliate, just to remember. For once, I wasn't going to let revisionist guilt twist the truth later. I pulled up the utilities portal again. Henry had tried to reset the passwords. He'd failed every security question. What's your mother's maiden name? What was the name of your first pet? What was the title of your favorite book as a child? He'd tried all the wrong answers because they weren't his questions. They were mine. Martha sent one last message. Just 4 words. Please fix this. Rowena, and just like that, my fingers stopped moving. There was no apology, no admission of harm, just the request to fix it. Again. I tapped out a single message and sent it only to Ethan. What's happening is consequence. You're welcome to learn how to manage it. Read at 3:42 p.m. There was no reply. I shut the laptop and sat still, letting the silence settle. It wasn't peace, exactly. But it was the absence of noise I hadn't chosen. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't fought. I had simply withdrawn my labor. Lila sat beside me, curling one leg beneath her. She didn't ask if I was okay. She knew I wasn't. She just watched like she had since this began. They're falling apart faster than I thought, she said. I looked at her. My voice came out steadier than I expected. I haven't even started. Some people plant seeds of revenge. I left a digital landmine. It wasn't wrapped in fire or fury, just a small black USB drive with a lime green sticky note. Read me, or don't. Either way, it's time. I knew exactly where he'd find it. Henry Carter's morning started like every other since I'd left, with control slipping through his fingers. Lights flickering, phone notifications buzzing with missed payments. Ethan silent, Martha simmering. Then came the knock. Dean. Uncle Dean never visited without reason. He didn't do checking in. He did fix this. Henry, he said. Before even stepping inside, what the hell is going on? I just got an NSF notice from the shared fund. Marilyn's fuming. Henry, already on edge, waved him into the kitchen like nothing was wrong. It's just a glitch. The bank's updating their systems. Dean wasn't buying it. Rowena set that account up. It ran like a clock. Now it's a mess. I could almost picture Henry's jaw tightening, his voice dropping to that defensive growl. She walked out. No explanation, no warning, left us scrambling. Then, scramble better, Dean snapped. Somewhere during the argument, something must have clicked. Maybe a flicker of guilt or desperation. Henry stomped down the hall to my old room, muttering something about resetting the damn login manually. I'd left everything clean except for one drawer. That's where he found it. I pictured the exact moment, his fingers brushing the flash drive, his eyes narrowing at the note, the pause wondering if it was a trap or just bait. It was both. He plugged it into the family desktop in the den where the curtains were always half closed and the air smelled faintly of ink toner and old coffee. The screen blinked once, twice, and then opened a folder titled, simply, The Packet. Inside 27 files, No labels, no summary. He opened the first. A bank transfer log. Thousands of dollars in recurring withdrawals from my account to pay for Ethan's tuition, Dad's car, Mom's medical treatments, none of which had been reimbursed. The next file, an audio recording, Henry's voice, harsh cutting from 2 years ago. If you won't co-sign the loan, then stop calling yourself family. My voice trembled in response. You didn't even ask if I could afford it. Click. Another file, a scanned copy of the car title. My car. Sold without my signature, transferred to Ethan under a forged release. I had the original contract. The file was time-stamped. Legally admissible. There were more. Voice memos, screenshots of texts, financial statements, a timeline of every favor they ever demanded, and the silent, obedient daughter who fulfilled them. Dean leaned over Henry's shoulder as the truth unfolded. His face reportedly went pale. Marilyn, who had followed him inside despite the tension, stood frozen in the doorway. What is all this? Dean asked quietly. Henry didn't answer. He just slammed the laptop shut like it might bite him. But it was too late. Because while they were reading, I was watching the upload bar finish from a cozy table at a downtown cafe. Lila sat across from me, typing something into her tablet. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the cloud sync complete and the automation trigger the next step. A secured folder had just been emailed to Dean's business partner, another copy to Marilyn's oldest son, a third scheduled for public release if tampered with. I didn't need to shout. The truth had better legs. Marilyn stepped outside, dialing with furious fingers, probably already spreading the word under the guise of deep concern. That's how she always gossiped, with her eyebrows raised and her voice lowered. It would be on the street in hours. The church group by Sunday, the Rotary Club by Tuesday. Lila looked up. Think he's read it all enough? I said. The cafe buzzed softly around us, keyboards, tapping steam, hissing spoons, clinking against porcelain. My world had gotten smaller, quieter. But it was finally mine. Lila's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. You're trending on 2 neighborhood boards. Guess Marilyn's working fast. I took another sip, eyes still on the screen. Let's see what happens when the truth has Wi-Fi. When they realized I built everything, they assumed I'd fix it. They still didn't understand I was done. The Carter house ran on wires I'd strung together in silence. From the smart thermostats to the mortgage, auto, drafts, even the household taxes, everything fed through logins and systems I had configured while they called me helpful. They didn't realize they'd mistaken dependency for love. And now that their machine stopped humming, they stood in the wreckage of their own expectations. Lila's spare room had become my command center. A folding table, a chair too short for the desk, and my laptop, the only piece of my old life I still trusted. The floor creaked beneath me as I moved between tabs, severing final connections. Every portal they once accessed through me, gone. Utility dashboards, locked. The federal tax account Henry used every April, reassigned. Even the insurance profile Ethan always forgot his password for was now protected behind 2-factor authentication he'd never decipher. Lila poked her head in with a half smile and a steaming mug. Still burning bridges, I took? The mug nodded. Building firewalls. Metaphorical ones, some, not all. I opened a new folder titled Legal Safety. Inside it, I placed the draft's disclaimers of liability, a formal notice to remove my name from any joint assets, and a cease and desist template I prayed I wouldn't need. I wasn't playing anymore. If they wanted to act like I was still part of their system, I needed a paper trail proving I had stepped away. Across town, the Carter household flailed in its new reality. Dean had shown up again, this time red-faced, waving a bounced transaction printout. You told me she was just upset, he barked at Henry. You didn't say she had proof. She's bluffing, Henry muttered. She's always been emotional. Dean laughed coldly. Then explain why the family's quarterly payment bounced, or why our neighbors are whispering that you used her credit to fund the cabin. Henry stood there blinking. I could almost see the sweat bead at his temples. He was scrambling for excuses, but truth moves faster than lies when you've left it packaged and time-stamped. My phone lit up. Henry calling again. This time, I let it ring until voicemail. "Rowena," he said. "Look, I know things have gotten tense. We can talk. Come home. We'll work it out like a family." The same word he always weaponized. Family. He meant erase your boundaries, quiet your voice, fix the things we broke. But that word didn't hold me anymore. Instead of replying, I forwarded the voicemail to my attorney. Lila glanced over as I attached the files to the secure portal. "Sending the legal notices," she asked. I nodded. It's time. Every keystroke felt like the click of a lock engaging behind me. Each draft, each clause, a brick in the wall between who I was and who I refused to be again. I submitted the formal notices. The system pinged back a confirmation. "You're officially out," Lila whispered. But I wasn't done. A ping on Lila's phone made her frown. "Rowena, you need to see this." She turned the screen toward me. A message from her former landlord, an older woman named Donna, who still lived above the storefront. Saw a man outside asking about Rowena. Said he was her dad. Didn't give a name, but looked agitated. I didn't breathe. For a moment, the room felt cold, too still. Henry had always said, "You're free to leave, but don't go running behind our backs." Except I hadn't run. I had walked. Deliberately. Now he was chasing shadows. I opened another browser tab. Virginia's harassment reporting form. I filled it slowly, precisely. Time, description, location, potential witnesses. I didn't dramatize. I documented. Submission confirmed. Lila placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry. I'm not," I said softly, because I wasn't scared. I was ready. He wanted to find me so he could tell his version of events. Spin guilt into gold. Twist my boundaries into betrayal. But I had already drawn the line. And now, I backed it with law. I closed my laptop, leaned back in the chair. The walls of Lila's spare room were painted light blue, calming in a way I hadn't noticed until now. Outside the window, the sun dipped lower, casting amber shadows across her old rug. I was no longer part of their machine. Emotionally, digitally, legally. And as I stood to stretch, I knew something else with chilling clarity. This wasn't retaliation. This was warning. I pulled out my journal and flipped to the last page where I had written names, dates, password, trails, actions taken. Beneath them in all caps, I wrote one final line. "If they cross this line, again I will light up everything they buried." That wasn't a threat. It was a promise. For years they called it help. I called it survival. Now I'm sending the bill. Nathaniel's office was all glass and metal, sleek, efficient, unapologetically modern. The kind of place where justice didn't shout. It emailed. A quiet hum of the HVAC system filled the room while my laptop screen glowed with numbers that once felt like love and now looked like a balance sheet. I leaned back slightly as Nathaniel tapped away on his keyboard, methodically building the invoice. "You're sure about this?" he asked without looking up. "I've never been sure of anything in my life." He didn't argue. He didn't suggest I reconsider or let things cool off. That's why I hired him. "Let's break this down," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Tuition payments 5 semesters. Co-signed withdrawn directly from your payroll account. Medical bills for your mother paid out of pocket. Car loans yours then transferred without your consent. Utility and phone services covering both their home and your brother's apartment for 6 years. He glanced over. "Do you want to add interest?" "Yes," I said. "And late fees." Nathaniel's eyebrows rose slightly. "You want to penalize them?" "No," I said, voice low. "I want to treat them the way they treated me." "Business-like?" He nodded, impressed. "Got it." Line by line, the list grew. I recognized every dollar. I remembered every moment I handed over a paycheck with a strained smile, while Henry said, "Family means sacrifice." When Martha smiled and said, "We're just so proud you can help." I used to think I was doing the right thing. Now I knew I'd been groomed for obedience. Lila sat in the corner scrolling quietly. She looked up only once when Nathaniel read the total aloud. $181,750. The number didn't startle me. It felt clarifying. Nathaniel added a simple subject line to the email for record and collection. I reread every line once more. Not to doubt, but to reclaim. Each transaction was evidence. Each expense a receipt for a loyalty they never returned. I clicked send. The message whooshed into digital space like a blade cutting through fog. We waited. 3 minutes later, the family group chat ignited. First, from Ethan. What is this? You're not serious, right? Martha sent a voice message. I didn't play it aloud. Just watch the waveform bounce as her voice cracked through the speaker. This is low, even for you. After everything we gave you, this is how you repay us. They gave me guilt. They gave me obligation. And I paid in silence. Nathaniel leaned back, folding his hands. You don't have to respond, but I did. I typed one sentence each letter, feeling like it had waited years to be freed. I was never joking when I gave it. Lila's breath caught slightly as I pressed send. The chat went silent. No more frantic messages. No more guilt-laced pleas. Just stillness. Then a notification pinged. A read receipt from Henry's email account. The invoice had been opened. A minute passed. Then another. Another ping. Nathaniel sat up straighter. You just got a partial transfer. My hands shook slightly as I opened the alert. 10 views and description gesture of good faith. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. This wasn't closure. It was confirmation. The first crack in the facade they'd built around the idea that I was theirs to use, to drain, to fold into the narrative of family duty. Now, I was an expense they could no longer ignore, and this was just the first line item. They thought they could show up uninvited like always. This time, a stranger opened the door. I heard the knock before I saw the message. 3 deliberate thuds spaced apart like punctuation marks in a sentence I didn't want to read. I didn't even need to glance through the peephole. I knew that sound. I knew it from years of answering doors I didn't want to, of pretending I wasn't home just to buy another minute of peace. My phone lit up a moment later. Ethan. Outside. Open up. I stayed seated on the far end of the couch legs, tucked under me, laptop humming on the coffee table. Lila looked at me from the kitchen, her brows raising just slightly. She didn't ask. She knew. Cal, I said quietly. He was already halfway to the door, his gym bag dropped by the coat rack. 6'2", calm as stone. If they expected to find me alone and vulnerable, they miscalculated. He opened the door, and there they were. Henry in front arms, folded chin, raised like this building belonged to him. Dean beside him, face red, jaw clenched. Ethan slightly behind, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he wanted to be anywhere else. We're here for Rowena. Henry said immediately, not even a hello. Cal leaned against the doorframe. She's not available. Dean narrowed his eyes. We're not here to make trouble. We're her family. Cal didn't budge. And she said she's not available. I stood out of sight in the hallway, listening each syllable from them, peeling back memories like bandages from old bruises. Listen, Henry said, voice growing sharp. This is between us. Just let her come talk. Then came the push. His hand landed on the door just like it used to land on the back of my chair when I was younger, claiming space that wasn't his. He leaned in, expecting the door to move to open, to let him through on the sheer force of habit. But Cal didn't flinch. Don't, he said. Just one word. Calm. Controlled. He pushed the door shut without slamming. Clicked the deadbolt. Turned back toward me. They're leaving, he said. I waited. A long pause followed. Then another knock, this one louder, more frustrated. A third. Then footsteps retreating. Lila came into the room. They think they still have access to you. They don't, I said and meant it. I pulled out my laptop and opened the tenant portal. Filed a report under security concern. Description 3. Men attempted entry without invitation. One tried to push past my roommate's partner to gain access. Then I called the building manager. Then the police non-emergency line. This is just documentation, I said. They've done this before. I recorded a short video later, sitting in front of the window as twilight gave way to city lights. I kept my voice even. They have no right to my peace anymore. I uploaded it to the secure folder labeled The Packet and backed it up to the cloud. My old phone buzzed across the table. Notifications from the family group chat. I didn't check right away. Instead, I cleaned up the dinner plates, packed away the tea I'd meant to drink earlier, and turned off the living room lights. Only then did I sit down and open the messages. Dean, you could have at least come outside. Henry, this ends now. Come home. Martha for once said nothing. And then Ethan's message arrived. Simple. Final. You're not family anymore. I read it twice, 3 times. And I felt nothing. No sting, no panic, no sadness. Just a strange quiet. Like I'd walked out of a burning building and only now noticed the cool breeze. I turned off the phone, slipped it into the drawer next to my bed. My silence wasn't a defense anymore. It was a choice, a boundary, a wall they no longer knew how to climb. And this time, I had someone else answering the door. The last favor I ever did for them was keeping quiet. I'm done with that too. It started with a simple folder labeled Archive 2007. One I hadn't opened in years, not because I forgot what was inside, but because I remembered too well. The drive had been encrypted and hidden beneath layers of firewall permissions. It took me 10 minutes to bypass my own protection. That's how badly I didn't want to see it, and how badly I knew it was time. Inside were photos, PDFs, audio files, receipts, notes. Memory after memory, preserved not for sentiment but survival. I clicked through the thumbnails. A grainy photo of Ethan's busted knuckles after he keyed Mr. Donnelly's truck. A scanned check in my name, $1 or $300 drawn from my first job out of college to settle the damage quietly. I remembered handing it over with shaking hands and a rehearsed apology. Mr. Donnelly never looked me in the eye again. Back then, Ethan had hugged me tight. I'll never forget this, he'd whispered. He did. I clicked again. A video. A younger me, barely 20, sitting across from Henry at the kitchen table. His voice sharp and clipped. Hand over the bonus, or you can find somewhere else to sleep. Martha was in the background, stirring soup like nothing was happening. I remembered thinking, I'll do this one last time. Just until they're stable. Just until things ease up. But they never did. The last time became a rhythm. Then a rule, then a role I couldn't escape. Lila sat beside me, watching, without judgment. This is a lot, she said, quietly sifting through the scanned receipts I'd pulled from a separate envelope. I nodded. It's all real. Do you want to use it? I want it out of my body. We worked in silence for hours. She scanned. I sorted. I timestamped everything through 2 digital notarization apps. The files began to organize themselves folders, marked by year, by name, by damage. I paused at one entry, a loan I'd taken out under my name when Henry's credit had tanked. It had been for Ethan's tuition. I'd made the payments for 3 years. My name had never appeared in any of the graduation photos. That stung more than I expected. I found one of Martha's old voice messages. I don't know why you're always so emotional, Rowena. You should be proud to help. It wasn't pride. It was compulsion. And it stopped now. By midnight, we had everything ready. I compressed the folders, encrypted them again this time with Nathaniel's legal signature attached, and uploaded them to a private domain I controlled. Just one viewer me, and a timer. If I didn't log in every 72 hours, or if someone tried to hack the domain, the site would go public. To press legal channels and 5 trusted backup emails I'd programmed to activate, each file labeled, dated sourced. Not revenge, not gossip, just truth. I sat back in the chair, shoulders aching, but for once, my chest didn't feel like it was folding in on itself. I looked around Lila's apartment, small, chaotic, honest. It had become more of a home to me in 3 weeks than my family's house had in 30 years. Lila brought me a cup of mint tea and sat beside me again. You did everything you could for them, she said. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I'd done too much. I'd covered for them, protected them, enabled them. Let their version of the story be the only one anyone saw. The good daughter, the quiet one, the one who always came through, until now. I closed the laptop, fingers lingering on the lid. It's not even about justice anymore, I whispered. It's about stopping the lie. Lila looked at me, eyes kind. Then you've already won. Maybe. But I knew what came next. They'd feel the shift. They'd sense the control slipping. And they'd fight harder. Spin wilder stories. Frame themselves as victims. I didn't care. Let them dig. Let them scramble. Because this time, if they wanted war, they'd have to fight on a field I designed. I turned off the lights, brushed my teeth, and set my alarm not just for the next day's meeting with Nathaniel, but for the 72-hour login timer, just in case. I crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling. Then I whispered barely loud enough for even myself to hear, "Let's see how brave they are when the past isn't buried anymore." They thought silence meant surrender, but silence was just the sound of me loading. I woke up before dawn. The sky outside was the color of ash, and the air in Lila's apartment felt unusually still, like the moment before a storm rolls in. I sat at the edge of the bed, the cool floor grounding me as I reached for my laptop. The familiar weight of it in my lap brought a calm I hadn't felt in weeks. I clicked open the folder, Failsafe. The contents stared back at me. Audio files, documents, digital receipts, notarized statements, screenshots of Henry's messages, pressuring me to sign away my earnings, my name, my freedom. Every transaction, every act of coercion, every sacrifice buried under the banner of family loyalty. I copied the link to the private site I'd built. The landing page was sterile, elegant, and impossible to refute. No accusations, just evidence. Lila padded into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Is it time?" I nodded. She didn't ask what I'd decided. She didn't need to. With a deep breath, I pasted the link into encrypted messages, 3 reporters local and national, and 1 legal watchdog. I pressed send. The emails left quietly. No fireworks, no dramatic music. But something shifted inside me. Henry was likely halfway through his coffee by now, probably seated at some polished brunch table, talking about quarterly goals and community boards. Meanwhile, the foundation he stood on was about to crack open. I refreshed the analytics. Visitors began trickling in. Then came the tweet, then another. Someone reposted an audio clip, his voice booming and venomous. "You owe us. Your job, your life, you'd be nothing without this family." The retweets multiplied. I sat cross-legged on the couch blanket around my shoulders, Lila beside me, both of us watching the numbers climb. The phone rang. It was Dean. "Henry. What the hell is this?" I could hear his voice through the thin apartment walls. "There's a memo here. Your signature asking Rowena to take out a loan in her name. Are you insane?" Henry's voice came muffled and defensive, but I didn't bother parsing it. Dean had always been loyal to the Carter name until now, when his own reputation was on the line. Then came the message from Martha. A shaky voice recording laced with tears. "Please, please, Rowena, this will ruin everything. Your father's heart, your brother's job. We didn't know you'd go this far. Just talk to us. Please." I listened to it twice. Not once did she say sorry. Not once did she ask what had driven me to this. Only panic because control was slipping. I deleted the voicemail without responding. The news alerts kept coming. A journalist from the Richmond Chronicle requested a quote. I typed, "Only silence is not consent. Truth is not cruelty." Dean's company stock dipped. His business partner made a public statement. A podcast picked up the story. By noon, National Carter family fraud was trending. I didn't feel elated. I felt awake. I dressed carefully, choosing a plain navy blouse and dark jeans. No makeup, no mask. I wanted to walk into Nathaniel's office exactly as I was, undistracted, unafraid. The receptionist didn't greet me with the usual pleasantries. She nodded silently and waved me through. Nathaniel was already waiting with a manila folder open and a document highlighted in blue. "This is the last step," he said. "Legal and financial dissociation from Henry Carter and all parties tied to his estate. This includes taxes, bank transfers, digital accounts utilities. You're completely out. I held the pen for a second. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to feel the moment in full. I signed. Nathaniel slid the papers back into their sleeve. Are you sure you're ready for what comes next? I met his gaze without blinking. I've been ready since the day they sold my car. They sold my car. I sold the silence. The door to Nathaniel's office clicked shut behind me, muffling the sound of city traffic. He was already standing by the window, a folder in his hand, eyebrows drawn in a line that warned me this meeting wasn't routine. I had the county clerk dig deeper into the property deeds your grandfather signed before he passed. Nathaniel said, Rowena! He didn't just leave you a house. He built a trust around it. I blinked. A trust. He opened the folder, spreading out a scanned will notarized and dated 10 years ago. Frederick Carter's name was etched at the bottom, followed by a single line, to my granddaughter, Rowena Carter, who never asked for anything but gave everything. My breath hitched. Nathaniel kept going. Your father was named temporary overseer, but never final beneficiary. He was supposed to disclose the trust after your 25th birthday. I was 32. So he buried it, I whispered. Nathaniel nodded grimly. Not just buried. He used the property as collateral. The bank flagged it after your digital exposure went public. That's how we found the gap. I didn't feel rage. Not immediately. Just that cold, distant clarity again, like I'd been standing in fog, and suddenly the air cleared, revealing how long I'd been lost. By the time we reached the county archive, the day had turned cloudy, as if the sky knew something was shifting. The clerk retrieved the original deed with surprisingly little effort. My name was there, spelled correctly, listed as the legal recipient of the Carter ancestral home held in trust until the rightful heir stepped forward. I guess I just did, I muttered. Before you file the transfer, the clerk warned, gently, you may want to visit the property. Make sure it's what you expect. I didn't need to expect. I remembered every wooden beam, every peeling window frame. I'd cleaned that house every summer as a child while Ethan got to chase fireflies. Still, I nodded. We drove in silence. Lila met us at the edge of the old neighborhood, and together we approached the faded white farmhouse. But before I reached the porch, a familiar voice called out from across the fence. Rowena! It was Dorothy Blake, the neighbor who had lived beside my grandparents for decades. Her eyes welled up the moment she saw me. He told me you'd come, she said. Your grandfather. He said if anyone deserved a clean start, it was you. Said your father wouldn't honor it, but the paperwork would hold. She held out a yellowing envelope. He left this with me. Told me not to mail it, told me to hand it to you. Inside was a note, handwritten. Legacy is earned, not inherited. But sometimes the right person does both. I held the letter for a long time. Back at the Carter house, Henry was pacing the living room while Dean leaned on the edge of the kitchen table, arms folded. You knew, Dean accused. You sat on that deed for years, Henry's voice cracked. I didn't think she'd find it. Dean snorted. You idiot. She was the one person smart enough to. Nathaniel texted me. Minutes later, deed approved. Keys ready. That night, I packed 2 bags. Lila hugged me at the door. You're not going back for revenge, are you? No? I replied. I'm going back to claim what's already mine. The floorboards creaked under my steps as I entered the old house. Dust danced in the light. The rooms were colder than I remembered, but the silence welcomed me this time. I lit one lamp in the hallway, then another in the kitchen, then upstairs. Room by room, I breathed life into what had been hidden away. I stood at the threshold of the front door, looking out into the night. The air smelled of pine and possibility. This is where I begin again. They set a table for reconciliation. I never showed up. The envelope was thick stock ivory, sealed with a waxy Carter crest, as if the family's name still carried the weight it used to. Inside, a handwritten invitation in Martha's looping cursive. Please join us for a quiet dinner tonight, just family. Let's heal. I stared at it for a long time, letting the edges bite into my fingers. It wasn't an olive branch. It was a leash. I hadn't stepped foot near the estate since I left with nothing but a duffel bag. Now, after everything they'd lost, they were asking me to return to sit at a table I was never truly welcome at, to pretend we were stitched from love and not silence. But the mask was cracking and they were trying to tape it back on before the world saw. I didn't RSVP. Instead, I forwarded the invite to Nathaniel. His reply came 20 minutes later. They've hired a media handler. Planning to record everything? Audio setup will capture your forgiveness. It's damage control. So that was the game. A family performance dressed up as reconciliation, wired with microphones and laced with manipulation. I imagined Henry rehearsing his lines, Ethan cracking a nervous joke, Martha dabbing at her eyes without a single tear behind them. And I imagined myself sitting there once again, expected to nod, to swallow, to smile politely, while the knife twisted. But I had other plans. At 6 p.m., while the Carter estate lit up in preparation, I was in my own kitchen, barefoot, stirring lentils and listening to jazz. Lila read a book at the counter, her presence a steady hum of comfort. Cal walked past us, both waving a bottle of wine, the smell of something ordinary: onions. Rosemary garlic filled the air. I was home. Across town they set the table. 4 places, matching linen napkins, fine silverware that hadn't been used since my grandfather's memorial. I watched them through a discreet live stream. Don't ask how I got it while sipping my wine. At 7:02 p.m., the mic accidentally went live. Dean's voice cracked through first. "She's ruining us," Martha whispered. "Do you think she'll actually come?" Henry hissed. "She has to. We need this recorded. We'll paint her ungrateful if she doesn't." Dean again. "Doesn't matter what she says. We'll edit around it." My stomach clenched, but not with pain. With purpose. I texted Nathaniel 2 words. Upload now. He knew which file. It was a 30-second clip with perfect clarity, no edits, no commentary, just the raw, unfiltered truth of men plotting spin and optics instead of reconciliation. Within an hour, the clip hit local social pages, then Twitter, then 3 media newsletters that had been circling the Carter story like vultures waiting for blood. The comments came in fast. "Is this real? Imagine calling your daughter ungrateful after robbing her blind. They invited her just to manipulate the story. Disgusting." Reporters started calling. Journalists tagged me. I didn't reply. At 9:14 p.m., Martha sent another message. Her voice cracked this time, less polished, more desperate. "Rowena, sweetheart, we didn't mean for it to sound like that. It was a misunderstanding. Please, let's still talk." I didn't listen past the first sentence. Lila looked up. "Anything new?" I closed my phone. "They're still acting like I'll come running. And will you?" I smiled small and firm. "I've already arrived. Just not where they wanted." She laughed quietly, nodding. "Then I'd say you're winning." Later that night, I opened the social media app I'd deleted months ago. I hadn't posted since the day they sold my car. The interface had changed, more noise, more filters, but some things remained. My account, my voice, no hashtags, no explanations, no emotion, just 12 words typed slowly, deliberately. Funny what people say when they think you're not listening. They built their world on my silence. I pulled the foundation out. The headlines came in waves, but the tide never stopped. Carter Holdings, under federal review. Dean Carter, disbarred pending investigation into will suppression. Tax irregularities surface after anonymous data leak. I sat beside Lila at her kitchen table, the soft hum of her laptop barely louder than the kettle on the stove. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. The truth was speaking for itself now. Across town in a boardroom, Henry once ruled like a king. His empire was crumbling. Contracts dissolved overnight. Investors fled. His phone rang nonstop, but now, no one was offering him deals. They were demanding answers. "I trusted you." Henry, one shareholder, snapped during a recorded meeting. "You lied to your own daughter. What won't you lie about?" His voice cracked. It's being taken out of context. But no one was listening anymore. Meanwhile, Dean faced the consequences of generations' worth of secrets finally unearthed. His law firm's door was chained shut, files confiscated. Cameras swarmed his driveway. He covered his face with a newspaper, the irony almost poetic. Ethan tried applying for student loans again. Denied. A red flag had been added to the family name. Financial risk. Family connection to ongoing fraud investigations. He texted me twice. Once with a question mark. Then with a screenshot of the rejection. I didn't respond. At dusk, I watched as a white truck pulled into the Carter estate. Two men stepped out dressed in dark blue and wearing official badges. One pinned a bright orange seal to the wrought iron gate. Property seized pending investigation. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. Back in Lila's living room, a news anchor spoke with barely disguised glee. What began as a daughter's quiet financial withdrawal has exposed a far deeper scandal involving 3 generations of legal and moral corruption. Lila muted the volume. You okay? I nodded slowly. I'm not celebrating. I'm just breathing. We sat in silence for a few moments. She reached over and refilled my tea. Outside thunder rolled. I took it as a blessing. Nathaniel had arranged for me to speak at a press conference if I wanted to. No pressure, he said, but I knew it was time. Not for revenge, for record. I wore a dark green blazer, hair back, no makeup except for clear balm. I stood at a plain podium inside a quiet event space, not glitzy, not branded. Just truth. Thank you for being here. I began, voice calm, firm. This is not about vengeance. It's about visibility. For years, I was told my role was to support in silence. I did. I paid. I signed. I gave. But silence should never be a family's strongest bond. It should never be the cost of staying connected. I took a breath, scanning the room. Flashes clicked. Eyes stayed on me. I didn't come forward for sympathy. I came forward because the story needed to be corrected. Because girls like me, dutiful, quiet, told to be grateful, we don't need to be invisible to be good. No questions. No follow-up. I stepped down. The statement was enough. Outside the building, reporters jostled behind barricades. I didn't run. I walked steady, calm. Lila stood by the car door open. As we pulled away, I glanced in the mirror and saw him. Henry. He'd come through the side alley, hoping to avoid attention. But a dozen cameras spotted him anyway. His suit was rumpled. He looked smaller. Not physically, but deflated. His shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. For the first time in my life, I watched him look unsure of his place in the world. One of the reporters shouted, Henry, is it true? Did you falsify documents? Another, do you have a statement for your daughter? He didn't answer, just walked faster. Head low. They'd built their world on my silence. And now, they had nothing left to say. Henry stepped out from the back gate, bowing his head to the cameras. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing what I'll never carry again. The sun filtered gently through the tall windows of the old Hale cottage, my cottage now. The stillness wasn't lonely. It was whole. No footsteps stomping down hallways, no raised voices behind closed doors. Just the hum of wind brushing trees outside, the quiet tap of my tea cooling beside me. A thick envelope sat unopened on the table. The script on the front was unmistakable, my mother's. I didn't touch it immediately. I'd already read the first letter that arrived this morning from Ethan. Short, nearly apologetic in its restraint. You did what you had to. I won't blame you. No punctuation. No pleading. Just space. I kept that letter, but the one from Martha had weight. Not just physically, though it was padded with extra sheets, but in its intention. That weight of manipulation wrapped in sentiment. I tore the seal slowly, careful not to let it dictate the pace. Her words, written in blue ink, spiraled in the usual patterns. You've always misunderstood me. Families fight, but they forgive. I only ever wanted what was best for you, even if it didn't look like it. You were never easy, Rowena. It wasn't a letter. It was a guilt trip with postage. I stood, walked to the fireplace, and tossed it in. The flame caught quickly. Blue ink curled into smoke. I didn't watch it all burn. I turned my back before the embers settled. Dorothy arrived not long after, her knock soft and familiar. She carried a small tin of ginger cookies and wore that knowing look that only women who've lived long lives and longer silences carry. "I brought tea," I said. She smiled. "I brought the reason to drink it." We sat together wordless for a while. She didn't ask about the letters. She didn't need to. Instead, she asked how the garden was doing. I told her about the irises blooming along the fence, the stubborn hydrangea that refused to open. When she left, she touched my shoulder. "You look lighter. I feel clear," I answered. Lila called later in the day. Her voice came through the line like sunshine. "Would you ever go back?" she asked gently. I looked around the shelves I'd restocked with books. I chose the curtains I finally opened, the hallway that echoed with silence instead of fear. "There's nothing to go back to," I said simply. Later, I went upstairs and opened the old storage closet. Dust motes danced in the light spilling from the overhead bulb. Boxes lined the shelves, old photo albums, keepsakes from a version of life I no longer owed myself to relive. I found a picture from when I was 6, me in a yellow dress gripping a sparkler too tightly, eyes wide with worry and hope. Henry had taken the photo. I didn't hang it in the living room or frame it for display. I pinned it on the back wall of the closet. Not to honor the past, but to acknowledge that I had carried it, survived it, and let it stay right there. My phone vibrated. A message from Nathaniel. They're asking for mediation. I stared at the screen, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I did. I typed slowly, deliberately. I decline. And then I set the phone down, leaned back in my chair, and looked out the window. The irises were blooming, bright, unapologetic, like something that had no idea it was ever planted in broken ground. They used to walk into my life like they owned it. Now they knock, and I don't answer. The sun dipped just below the trees, casting amber light across the windows of my home. Not the house I grew up in, but the one I reclaimed. The table was already set, the candles flickering gently. A soft instrumental played in the background, and I moved through the kitchen in no rush, breathing in the scent of rosemary and garlic. I chose everything in this house, the dishes, the flowers, the walls painted in a color I once only allowed myself to admire in magazines. Lila arrived first, kicking off her shoes before stepping into the kitchen. "Smells like closure," she said, setting down a bottle of wine. "Better than revenge," I smiled. Dorothy came next, bringing a loaf of her infamous walnut bread. She had a knowing look in her eyes. "Your grandfather would be proud of this," she said, running a hand over the wood grain of the dining table. "He always said peace was a room you built, not a place you escaped to." We sat, we laughed. There were no toasts, no declarations, just the easy cadence of women who had nothing left to prove. At some point, I excused myself, stepping into the hallway where my phone buzzed quietly on the console. One notification. A text from Ethan. I stared at it. No preview. Just, "I'm sorry, I didn't open it." Instead, I placed the phone face down and returned to the table where Lila was describing her latest painting project and Dorothy was mid-laugh. "I used to think home was earned," I said softly when there was a lull in conversation. That if I worked hard enough, made myself small enough, I could finally deserve it. Dorothy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Turns out it was inherited. And reclaimed, I finished nodding. Outside, I heard the soft hum of a familiar engine. My breath caught, not from fear, but recognition. I stood and moved toward the front window, parting the curtain an inch. The Carter family car sat idling across the street. The windows were dark, but I knew who sat inside. Henry, Martha, maybe Ethan. They didn't get out. The car didn't park. It lingered like a question, one I no longer needed to answer. Lila joined me at the window. "They came all this way." "They're not coming in," I said without emotion. The car pulled away, slowly swallowed by the night. No one knocked. No one even stepped out. It wasn't silence they gave me, it was distance. And I didn't chase it. Back at the table, I refilled my glass. "They know this door won't open again. I didn't lock them out. They walked away." No one responded. There was no need. The silence in the room wasn't empty. It was full of things finally put down. Later, as the dishes were cleared and the candles burned low, I stepped outside with my wine. The air was cool, edged with the scent of fallen leaves. Above me, the sky stretched vast and quiet. I lifted my glass, not in celebration, but in declaration. To silence and to everything it told me. Thank you for reading my story. If any part of my journey felt familiar, if you've ever felt used, silenced, or erased, I hope you know this reclaiming your voice isn't selfish. It's survival. I used to think love meant sacrifice. Now I know it means choice. If you've walked through fire for others, it's okay to stop and ask, would they do the same for me? If not, walk away and do it with your head high. Tell me, have you ever had to set boundaries with those who once raised you? Leave me a comment below. Your story matters too.